Thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Zeno Temple, and I am the founder and the president of the Just Us movement. I really appreciate everyone being here today as we, launch our first webinar of the Just Us movement and, spark a dialogue about critical discussions and issues related to access to justice. As you all know, and if you've been following, and especially if you followed our Instagram page, we've been talking a lot about access to justice throughout this month, and pretty much the barriers faced by historically under-resourced and underrepresented communities. And we want to talk about how we can take actionable steps to creating equitable systems with some of the insights from esteemed panelists like we have here today, Judge Peter Krupp and attorney Gladys Vila. Attendees will gain a deeper understanding of preventative legal action and strategies for systemic change. A lot of our topics in this kind of webinar format will be centered around, the mission and the goals of the Just Us movement. So your attendance to these webinars will be really important, really vital to the success of the organization as a whole. And so I really appreciate you once again for being here. A little bit about us. We're a nonprofit organization, and we're dedicated to empowering communities through legal advocacy, health initiatives, and education. And we aim to break down systematic barriers to provide tools for individuals to achieve justice, equity, and opportunity. Some of our missions is to inspire change by addressing disparities in justice, healthcare, and education. So by equipping communities with preventative resources and fostering inclusive opportunities, we envision a world where justice and equity is attainable for all. I talked about our mission and our vision, but some of our goals as a whole is education. So we look to equip you all with life-saving knowledge about different opportunities and different things as a whole that affect us directly. We want to raise awareness about systemic barriers and stigma surrounding some of the things that we'll be touching on. And then we want to also inspire our attendees to advocate for each other and for those who support us. So why your support matters, the webinar and future events will provide a platform for learning and mobilizing collective action. And by participating, you're joining a movement, right? So we're committed to fostering justice, equity, and opportunity. So before we get into the questions today that we have, I did speak earlier about our panelists, Judge Peter Krupp and attorney Gladys Vila. I would like to just open up the opportunity for each of them to an introduction about themselves, tell you all a little bit about themselves in a way that, we've already shared their bios out, but in a way that is a little bit more personal and from their own voices. So Judge Krupp, would you like to start?
Thanks, Zeno, for the invitation, and thanks for putting together this organization. Access to justice is among the most important problems we have in our system. Our system doesn't work if people are substantially differently resourced when it comes to advocacy in the courts. We see that all the time. Maybe it's a little bit more pronounced on the criminal side sometimes, but certainly on the civil side as well, where we see lots of pro se litigants. I grew up in Connecticut. I went to college in Rhode Island. I went to law school in Chicago. And even from the very beginning when I was in law school, I had the sense that the craft of being a lawyer was interesting and challenging, but I felt like the outcome of what I was trying to achieve was far more motivating for me than writing a good brief or structuring some legal argument that didn't have an outcome that I agreed with. And so after law school, and I can tell you a little bit about things I did in law school, which were also along these lines, but we were talking about that a little bit before we started the conference. I went to a big firm after graduation, not for any particularly good reason, and I did a lot of pro bono stuff while I was there. My attitude was I would take every dog case in the big firm so that I could get firsthand experience about how to try a case. Then and I don't mean a dog case in terms of it was a bad case, but it was a smaller case and didn't have any glamour and it didn't have any interest for the partners to handle it. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. That meant I made all the decisions on the case and I did the depositions and I went to court. So in an unusual circumstance over the course of 7 years or 6 years in a big firm, I tried about 6 or 7 or 8 cases, which is very unusual for a big firm. And then I left there and I went to the Federal Public Defender's Office because I felt like if I was talking to somebody on the other side of a case and I banged my hand on the desk and I said, I'll see you in court, I needed to have the skills necessary to really be able to back up that threat. And so at the Federal Public Defender's Office, it was great. I was advocating for people who were accused of really serious crimes. I tried cases, bank robberies, stolen car case. I tried a retaliatory homicide case. It was all in the federal court. It was very motivating. And I really honed trial skills. And then I left there after 3.5 years, went and set up my own practice. And I had my own practice for 16 years before I got on the bench. I have been on the Superior Court for the last 12 years. I got on in February of 2013. And I'll say one thing about my small firm practice. In the small firm, I did both commercial litigation, similar to what I did at a big firm, and criminal defense, like I did at the Federal Public Defender's Office. So I kind of married my two prior jobs together and continued to do a ton of pro bono stuff, whether it was writing amicus briefs on legal issues that I thought were important or representing the ACLU, or tried a case for the racial profiling national coordinator who himself was profiled when he came into Logan Airport. I mean, we did a lot of interesting things. And then I got on the bench in February 2013. And in the Superior Court, we sit basically 6 months a year on the criminal side of the court's docket and 6 months a year on the civil side of the court's docket. And the docket is extraordinarily broad. And in the Superior Court, most people are represented. It is the odd case, the rare case that I get where one side or both sides are not represented. If you go to the small claims court, if you go to the housing court, if you go to the probate and family court, you'll see somewhere between 75 and 100% of the cases have no representation. And that is extremely difficult for the court to get things right. And it's very difficult for the litigants to feel like they understand the process, that they're being heard, and the advocacy by somebody who's not trained in the law is not great. And so access for justice is huge in those courts. It's still huge in my court too, but maybe to a slightly lesser extent. So that's a quick introduction to me and my background.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, I relate to you in the sense of like getting involved early. In that process now, I want to get involved and do various different things so that down the line I have the skills to build on top of, those important issues that I care about, right? So yes, let's move on to Gladys. Could you give us a little background about yourself?
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. Well, I'm Gladys Vila. I'm staff attorney at the Center for Social Justice here at Western New England University School of Law. I'm Puerto Rican. I am from Arecibo, Puerto Rico. It's a surf town, pretty much. A beautiful place. I began my career in legal services of Puerto Rico. Was my first real experience as an attorney. Although I did some stuff with a small firm after law school. I was in law school and I went to this small law firm, and I knew him. I knew the attorney, and he asked me, Gladys, do you know how to, I think it was a summary judgment or answer a summary judgment. I don't remember the question. And I told him, well, I don't know how to do it, but I learned. And he gave me all the file, and I took it home and I did it. And I spent I kept working with him through my law school years. And then afterwards, I was there for some time. After that, I began my career in legal services of Puerto Rico. And I consider that although I also work after legal services, I also work for the legislature of San Juan, the municipal legislature of San Juan, Puerto Rico. I consider legal services my school. This is where I developed my skills as an attorney. Well, I had so many opportunities to grow. I had the opportunity to be in front of, to have a case in the Supreme Court of Puerto Rico. I have many opportunities, and I have great mentors also. When I was there, the executive director was Charles Hay Maestre, and he was very close friends with Sonia Sotomayor. They went to school together I think it was Princeton. And he was this kind of person who enjoyed having his attorneys grow and thrive. He passed later, but I was so fortunate to be there while he was there. I learned a lot from him there, and he gave me many opportunities to grow there. So after being in the municipality of San Juan legislature as a legal advisor for the president, I came here. My husband is a professor at Clark University, so that's why I'm here. And I've been at the center since 2022, I think. Yes. And it's been a great experience for me as a Latina, as an attorney, and having the opportunity to help people from Puerto Rico who are living here and who are struggling in the legal system. It's been a great experience for me. So pretty much that's my story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for the work that you're doing. You're really doing amazing work. From everything that, we experience here at Western New England and what you deal with in the courts every day, it's definitely like admirable work. So thank you for that. And both of you for the work that you do. And thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to come here today and share your expertise. And Judge Krupp, you spoke a little earlier about like outcome motivation and going from a big firm to coming back into public service. What was really like your inspiration, which drove you to the career that you're in now, advancing equitable access to justice, like initiatives and standards?
Every job I took, every time I had a job transition, I transitioned to a job that made less money. So you go figure that one out. The money was not a motivation. It was doing interesting work that was a motivation. And I can't say that I dedicated my career to advancing, access to justice. I can only say that in the jobs that I've had, it's been important within the confines of the job for me to do that work to the extent I could. And there are other jobs I could take that would provide more direct service, where 100% of my time would be spent helping people who don't currently have access to justice. And I can't say for a second that that's what I've done. But I think in every role you have, and no matter what the role is that you do have, you have an opportunity to help people within that job or beyond that job. If you see a problem, you have a mechanism for trying to improve that problem if you can through your job. I'll give you one example in my current job. I had the good fortune to be invited to the Mass Correctional Institution in Norfolk in I don't know, maybe 2015 or 2016 to attend a restorative justice retreat that the men inside Norfolk were putting on for other men inside Norfolk. And they were inviting people from outside to learn a little bit about it, see and participate actively in their restorative justice process. It was a 2-day commitment to go from 9 to 4 on the weekend into MCI Norfolk. And I was so bowled over by the power of it that I started to agitate with lots of my colleagues to go into Norfolk to experience restorative justice. And ultimately, the Chief Justice of the SJC went in, and she was so bowled over. It was her position that we needed to start restorative justice pilot programs in several district courts to try to export into the community the amazing work that's happening inside a prison. That means that I was sufficiently, others are sufficiently open to learn from people who are incarcerated about things that we can do better on the outside. And so we are now in the process. I'm a or a vice chair of the SJC's Restorative Justice Committee. We're trying to build pilot programs to bring restorative justice to criminal cases on the outside. And that's in the process of being launched in a couple of pilot counties. It's about being open and aware of what the problems are around you and thinking about ways in which you can not solve those problems, but improve the lives of some people, improve the process that you're a part of, and be sufficiently self-reflective, both, I guess, about your own role in the system, but also about the system itself to see its flaws, see ways in which it can be improved. So there's lots of other things I could say, but it's a good example.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, one of the really important pieces or the big pieces to me that you just spoke on was like learning from others, right? And learning from others in the sense of, wherever you go, you can treat it as a learning lesson. And I kind of tie that back into what Attorney Vila was saying earlier about mentorship. And I think that affected her career in some way. I'm sure you've had mentors along the way. Is it turning to that point? Could you share a defining moment in your career that motivated you to focus on what you focus on today, like community-centered legal advocacy?
Well, my experiences in legal services of Puerto Rico, I can mention that my time there was very, very important throughout my career. And it was a very eye-opening experience being there because I grew up and lived in a very sheltered and protected environment. And it was there that I saw for the first time all the difficulties and the challenges and the lack of access to justice that most people were experiencing. There, to be honest, I saw things that I've never seen, that I never saw before. And for me, being there, I learned that I wanted to spend the rest of my career doing that kind of work. It was there that I learned, and I decided what I wanted to do. And to be honest, in law school, no one mentioned legal services to me. My school was very oriented to corporate, labor law, that kind of things, big, huge law firms. I didn't have time to do that. I had 2 children, a boy and a girl. I lived in Arecibo, which is like 1 hour from San Juan, more than 1 hour from San Juan, and those law firms are in San Juan. I never considered this type of work because I was older than my colleagues. And also, I didn't have time to be in an office working until midnight to impress a boss. So that's, my situation. Once I entered legal services, I was sure that this is what I want to be doing the rest of my life.
So now that you entered it, what does access to justice mean to you?
Well, access to justice, it's a multi-layered definition, no? And I think that is the right to be accompanied by a lawyer, from the simpler things to the more complicated ones, the right to have a fair process, a fair trial, the access to have free legal aid. It's also access to justice. It's when people know their rights. People have the opportunity to learn and to know that they have rights. Also, have access to technology, to access the legal system, and the access to translate communications, the access, the break the language barriers that they encounter in the system here in the States.
Absolutely. And Judge Krupp, I would like to offer up the same question to you. Being in this system and being in your profession, what does access to justice mean to you?
I think Gladys gave a great definition. I think people need to be able to understand the processes that they're facing. The language barriers need to be broken down. And that's sometimes incredibly complicated and difficult to do. And when translation services are inadequate or unavailable, justice is not served at all. And I give you lots of examples of that too. There are so many different initiatives that have been started by the court system to try to address access to justice. The SJC has an Access to Justice Committee, which has been meeting probably for a decade, even maybe a little less than a decade. It has subcommittees that look at lots of different issues. It's resulted in better signage in places. It's resulted in volunteer lawyers going into particular courts to be available to consult to people who are pro se, who want to learn about the process. It's resulted in lists of law firms that are willing to take cases in particular situations. The first 2 cases I ever tried were in the federal court, and the federal court had these prisoners' rights cases that were filed by pro se prisoners. And the federal judges used to call big firms and ask them, I need somebody to take this case. It looks like it has merit. This person needs a lawyer. And the partner at the firm would take it, and they would go out to the lawyers and say, who's willing to take it? And my hand would always go up. And I tried week-long federal jury trials in terms of timing. But the first 2 cases that I tried were these kinds of prisoners' rights cases in federal court. You can't start your career trying cases in federal court. It never happened, okay? But because there were these access to justice concerns among the federal judges, it gave some lawyers an opportunity. If you're a young lawyer, there's just no substitute for raising your hand and saying, I'll learn it, like Attorney Vila just described. I don't know Rule 56, but I'll learn summary judgment if I have to oppose a summary judgment motion. And that's got to be your attitude. Because you'll get more experience, you'll serve people who are underserved, and justice will be advanced by you agreeing to put your hand up. Even if you're not skilled and experienced in that area, you will be much better than the pro se litigant, and you'll have people to talk to. There's plenty of lawyers who will take your question on a particular topic if you volunteer. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly answering your questions, in terms of what access to justice means to me. But I think sometimes examples are better than a definition, because I really do think that access to justice can mean so many different things and can present the opportunity in so many different places.
I think that was perfect. You jumped right on to what I was going to ask you next, is just how do we make justice more tangible? And you spoke on the issue right there, just of those different initiatives and different programs that have come up. So as this video is watched in the future, and as we have participants here that are either entering the legal field or in the legal field already through law school or going into their first years, what areas do you think that in your mind have you seen kind of was a good idea when it first came out and kind of like fell off a little bit and maybe needs someone or one of these people that are on the call or looking at it in the future to bring back or revive or maybe look at it from a different angle? Is there some way that we can make justice more tangible for people in our communities?
Was that to me or
To me, or
In general, whoever wants to take it,
I'll take a crack at it. Most pilot programs fail, okay? Not because they're not good ideas, but because there aren't people who carry them on. They're the pet project of a person or a couple of people, and then they fall by the wayside. Can you imagine what it would be like if a law school took on a project to call lawyers and organize lawyers to go in on a volunteer basis to answer questions in the probate court. And the law students could sit with those lawyers for the day that that person was a volunteer. The law student would learn so much about probate court and the problems of probate court and probate court procedure. The pro se litigants would be so much better advised and would feel so much better about the process if they had a lawyer and maybe even a law student to run things by. Programs, there's so much need, and it's just a matter of what you decide to put your efforts into. And I think there would be no shortage of lawyers who would say, yes, once a month, I would commit to that. That's really interesting and important work. I know probate court procedure like the back of my hand. I'd be happy to help. And if you had a group of people who could organize that to go into a particular court, you would be solving an enormous problem. Or housing court and handle people who are pro se as landlords or pro se as tenants. There is no shortage of pro se need on both sides of the V in the housing court. And many of those things can be worked out in terms of mediation. You know, law students could be trained as mediators to serve as informal mediators in a housing court setting. And so often the judge is confronted with 5 cases that are coming for trial on that day. The judge doesn't have the capacity to get to all 5 and thinks that there is a way for cases 1, 3, 4, and 6 to be mediated. And maybe they've got to try 2 cases and they'll hear the parties on 2. But where are we going to send them? Who's available there to mediate? If you have mediators on hand, and some housing courts do, you know, it would be invaluable. So again, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I'll turn it to Gladys and she can mop up after the.
no, I agree. There are many programs that could be useful, but I think also that to be effective, the courts and the justice system must understand the people they serve. They must understand the community, the cultural aspect of the population. And I was reading something I read this Journal of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. I love this. And I read something here that says the American justice system belongs to all Americans, not just lawyers. We must find ways to reach out beyond the legal profession to the greater public, to the business, medical, science, engineering, media, and other communities to educate them about the gravity of the access to justice crisis. So I think it's something that the courts and us as part of the law school, you know, to explore these other areas and find solutions and find answers there.
I think you both hit it like right on the head. I mean, when I was looking for an answer, you answered it perfectly. When I was in my access to justice class, one of the main reasons I thought of, you know, justice movement, even like the concept of thinking about access to justice in preventative ways and helping out the community. We have an access to justice course here at Western New England that was really instrumental in my thought process of like, how can I help the community? And just being a part of that class and listening to my classmates, other initiatives that they were tackling and the ideas that were flowing, just like the conversation on why access to justice is even a topic kind of brought us back into like this work is really important. Like it touches everyone. It touches like everyone at like different stages of their lives, and no one needs an attorney on their best day, right? So it's really important that access to justice is in place because it's really affecting people and our neighbors, the people around us. Go ahead.
Can I add one thing? Because I think what Gladys said was really important. I mean, the justice system doesn't just belong to lawyers. It belongs to the people. And the people that I see most invested in the justice system, frankly, are jurors. I am bowled over by what jurors do. Okay, they come in, they know nothing about the law. They understand how serious I and the lawyers and everybody else are taking a case. And I find that very infrequently do people try to weasel out of jury service. Okay. People are interested. They want to serve, and then they work mightily hard to follow the law and come out with the right result. I don't think, and that is our general society. That is our general citizen on the street. And they come from all walks of life. They do the best they can, and then they go about their business. But it's worth just taking a minute to appreciate what we ask of citizens.
Yes, they're the peers.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect segue. Like, what advice would you have for advocates, young advocates, maybe aspiring organizations like ours, like the Just Us movement, to kind of work towards bridging like those gaps that we were just talking about?
Just us, if you can organize an educational programs in the community, awesome. If you can see a need in a particular court, if you want to talk about what needs there are in a particular court where you could be instrumental, call the chief judge of that court. That person's going to sit down with you. That person sees what the needs are. If you want to organize volunteer lawyers, it would be awesome for people who are in law school or the courts. I mean, these are the kinds of things that there's this glaring need, and it's just a matter of what you want to put your energies towards. We have in March, generally, we kind of have an outreach month from the court system. And we make an effort to go out into high schools and junior high schools and adult, elder communities and things like that, and talk about the rule of law and the importance of supporting the legal system and difficult problems that we see in the legal system and stuff like that, trying to make the legal system better. Any of those kinds of educational opportunities elevate the court's standing in the eyes of the public, make the court more accessible and less of a black box that they don't know what happens inside. And all of those kinds of things would be awesome in terms of expanding access to justice. You have this platform that you've created, Zeno, which has the opportunity to pick up project that makes sense to you and your group and implement it in some way. And I just think that's really exciting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Gladys?
Well, for me, I think the only thing that I can say, well, move outside the box, be creative. Community engagement is extremely important. If I keep talking, I would say that more bilingual attorneys and advocates are needed. And pretty much that's what I can say about this. And about, I don't know if I mentioned regarding bilingual attorneys here at the school, the Latino Law Student Association, they began a Spanish for Lawyers workshop. And then the school began to offer a 1-semester class on Spanish for lawyers. And it has been very successful. And I'm super proud of that because I'm seeing advocates and students getting involved in a new language and a new culture. And it's very important. And I have seen students who are bilingual, they know some Spanish, but they are shy to speak the language. And I encourage them to speak in Spanish. Use your language. I will not mention the name, but I will. Last semester extern, I forced her to speak Spanish. I'm lying. And she said that. She said this in a card she wrote me. The opportunity to work with you at the center has taught me many things about this field as a woman, as a person of color, and as a Spanish speaker. I have come to learn that my identity, I always tell them, it's a plus, not a burden. So I think I did my job.
Wow, that was
That's why
amazing.
I said that. They mentioned this part of, I did my job. I'm proud of that.
And thank you for doing that.
They have something that other people don't have. So it's important and, to be proud of that and use it to help people.
Absolutely. I was saying thank you for thank you for being yourself and making people, feel comfortable within being themselves, right? Like that card speaks for itself. You made someone's whole experience different. You shifted someone's whole perspective on being a law student. And
Yes,
that work is really Yeah.
They are not here because they speak Spanish. But if you're here and you happen to speak Spanish, then it's a plus. You have something that other people don't have. It's important.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. So that being said, what systemic changes would you like to see implemented within the next decade for justice for all, to advance justice for all? And that goes to either of you.
Well, I'd love to see this restorative justice program take root and catch fire. That's a mixed metaphor, which is a bad mixed metaphor. They're contradictory, but in any event, I would love to see it spread. And so we'll see if that gets implemented. I would love to see more lawyers in the context of places where there are now pro se litigants, because I do think that is the biggest place where a lawyer can make a difference, and I think that a lawyer's explanation about the process and advocacy for someone in court is key. So those are the biggest is an improvement in our level of volunteer lawyers in cases that do not have a huge dollar value, but have profound effects for people, right? So, in big business disputes in the Superior Court, everybody is lawyered up. I'm in the middle of a trial right now where there are 5 or 6 lawyers for each side in the courtroom at all times. It's crazy. And there's a lot of money at stake, but that's all that's at stake is money. If you go to the housing court, it's about whether somebody's going to be on the street or not. If you go to the probate court, it's about whether somebody's going to have their kid with them or their kid is going to be taken away. And these are far greater life decisions or decisions that affect somebody's life than the money decisions that I make in the Superior Court where everybody is lawyered up. And when we as a society recognize that the way we treat the least among us is really what judges us, right? I mean, that's how we should be judged. Everybody in the housing court and everybody in the probate court will have a lawyer.
I think that would be an amazing initiative, something that I think even when you're looking at the access to justice movement overall, and even the textbooks that we were reading in class, that's been from the start, how do we get people lawyers? Like just access to lawyers. And then now we're moving into how do we make courts more accessible in different various ways. But overall, the goal has been lawyers, right? How do we get them representation? Attorney Vila?
Well, maybe seeing more lawyers dedicating their careers to community center advocacy and also a more diverse legal profession and legal system in terms of language, that people see individuals that look like them in the system, in court, in as an attorneys, as judges, as as part of the system.
Absolutely.
Let me suggest one other thing too. My daughter, I'm aware of this because of my daughter. She worked in healthcare for the homeless. She's now an MD and she's, in a residency program. But increasingly, there are places like Codman Square Health Center in Boston, various community health centers. I bet there are in Springfield too, but I don't know. Community health centers that are associated with Bay State or otherwise that are looking at social determinants of health. And when somebody comes into Codman Square Health Center and they're presented with asthma, the question is, do you have systemic asthma or do you have mold in the place that you're living? Can I solve your symptoms by simply giving you an inhaler? Or do I need to help you solve your housing related impacts, which are adversely impacting your health? And in some of those places, they have connections to legal avenues to start advocacy on somebody's behalf to improve their health, okay, by improving the mold problem that they have in the house that they're in. So we can't look at this as just a legal problem. It has so many different ripples, okay? If somebody is housing challenged, their kid might not be going to school regularly. That kid is hugely disadvantaged, right? We all know these ripple effects. And so when you talk about the systemic problems that I would love to see solved, my head first goes to law, right? Because that's what I know. But health disparities are at least as significant, and they often impact things that lawyers can do something about. And so I'm not giving you a particular thing. I'm trying to broaden the scope of what we think about as access to justice issues. And nobody's dealing with the mold problem because their asthma is acting up. They're not going to court to deal with the mold because they're sick, okay? So somehow all of this has to be looked at more holistically than the silos we often look at.
And to your point, when thinking of the mission of Just Us, we want to do legal, but also health and education. And like you just pointed out, in health, there's disparities and there's a bunch of different avenues that are blocked and have different, barriers in place. And the same thing with education. And we're starting to see more and more of those being voiced and being the light being shined on it. But we've known for a very long time that there's disparities within education, and you can see it from within locally, nationally, regionally. It's everywhere. So thank you for pointing that out for sure.
So I was going to ask both of you, do you have any glaring issues of access to justice now that we're under a new administration? I know there's been a lot of executive orders that have come since Inauguration Day just last week, but I did want to ask if there was anything that stood out in particular to you, and do you have any suggestions for people who are not law students or becoming future lawyers like myself on how exactly to help these issues? Because I know that both of you look at a legal lens, but like you had mentioned, Judge Krupp, there's so many ripples of where this situation can occur. And I work with a lot of clients a lot of governmental agencies who are interested in, looking at issues on a number of different levels, and education being a major part of it. So just curious on what advice you would give for people beyond just lawyers and law students that could help.
I'm happy to take a crack at that one. I mean, I have a kid who, my oldest, works for an immigration organization in upstate New York. They have an ICE detention facility in Batavia, New York. He's working with them, and he's been doing a lot of immigration policy. Access to justice, there's no right to a lawyer in immigration court. There are tons of people who are right now in jeopardy who came into the U.S. because they have on temporary protected status or any number of other programs where they lawfully came into the United States, which are now being terminated by executive action by the Trump administration. Those people are in peril in the United States because the rules are changing moment to moment. It's a huge problem. And who knows what comes down the pike next. I was a lawyer after 9/11. And we didn't know what was going to happen after 9/11, but the FBI was going out very aggressively and picking up for questioning people who were Muslim. And I was one of the volunteer lawyers that agreed to take cases through the ACLU when someone would call the ACLU and they wanted a lawyer to help them understand what their rights were when they were going in to respond to an FBI inquiry, or they wanted a lawyer to go with them, or they didn't know what their rights were and they wanted to talk to a lawyer in advance, or they got a grand jury subpoena to go in to give testimony, really only because they belong to a particular mosque. So we put together a number of people who were sort of a rapid response force to respond to those kinds of needs. It's really impossible to know what's going to happen on a going forward basis, but the immigration thing now is just the first. You're almost guaranteed that it's just the first, and the need is going to be responsive to whatever the administration does.
Thank you so much for that answer. Attorney Vila, did you have anything or?
Yes, for me, this week has been a little bit traumatic because in San Juan, we had, on Sunday, we had raids. There were ICE went after mainly people from the Dominican Republic who are part of our community, are part of the island. And they took with them, people who were citizens who were legal in Puerto Rico. So for me, has been a complicated week. And also, I don't do immigration, but we have a project here. It's GAPE. We help people update their markers in their passports and their documents, state and federal documents, and it cannot be done anymore. There's an order, establishing that it's only men or women. No more. We have a meeting tomorrow to address this issue. So yes, relearning, and it's been a complicated week.
It's definitely been a complicated week.
Extremely sad of what's happening.
Yeah.
in my country. And here, it will happen here also.
Even from like the student lens, it's been very interesting, for lack of a better word, to walk around and hear from your fellow students of, what their experiences are, and from all the different backgrounds that they have to,
Mhm.
come to school and come to class and have to like, give their all. So it's been a challenge, but I
Yeah.
guess everyone, the best we can do is push on and hope we can, get our law degrees so that we can help out on the legal side of things, right? And as Khadijah stated earlier, be an advocate in other areas like education and healthcare as well. We do have a question in the chat. So this question is for Judge Krupp. Gladys mentioned the importance of culture and competency. I was wondering if, as a judge or in the legal system, there were opportunities where people can develop their cultural competency in a professional setting or otherwise.
That's a great question. Cultural competency means so many different things, and we have tried to do that in a lot of different ways as a court. And there are so many different ways we could continue to address it. I'll give you a few examples of things that we have done to develop cultural competencies just in the last 5 or 6 years. We put together a trip for judges to go down to Montgomery, Alabama to see the Equal Justice Initiative, the Lynching Museum, and experience some of the civil rights history, but it's somewhat preserved in that area. And we got 70 judges to go down to Montgomery, Alabama to do the tour. And then there were significant others that also went. We met with judges from my colleagues on the Superior Court analog in Montgomery, Alabama, and members of the Alabama Supreme Court. And it resulted in a lot of soul searching in terms of different people's experiences. That trip has now been repeated. I was on the first trip. The trip, I believe, has been repeated now 2 more times with other cohorts of judges. We've brought trainings in for judges on what it is like to be poor. I grew up in a middle-class family. I never wanted for food. I never wanted for clothing. I don't have that experience. And we brought in an extremely good person to do some seminars and some lectures to people about what it's like to be poor. And I ended up missing that seminar, and I went up to a 2-day seminar that she was giving up in Maine with a number of people from Massachusetts to experience that and get a little bit more understanding of that. I am trying to bring people into the prison system to meet with people who are incarcerated. We recently had a mandatory, all judges were required to attend a seminar. We closed the courts for purposes of doing an all-day seminar on drug abuse and mental health and the constellation of factors that affect people who are affected by drug or substance abuse and how that might interact with mental health issues. These are all cultural competencies insofar as these are things that affect a lot of people that are before us. There are so many others that we could be developing. There are language competencies. There are so many other life experiences that I don't have that I would benefit as a judge from having or being exposed to in some way. And obviously, you can imagine there is a range of receptivity by people on the bench for these kinds of programs. Some people are eager for them. Other people are very resentful of them. What are you telling me this for? I mean, you know the gamut, and judges are no different. We run the gamut like anybody else in society. But I would say that overall people are receptive, and I think overall people are interested to learn things they don't know, and that includes things like cultural competencies. So, and I think there is a receptivity to it at the SJC level, which can often mandate things like we're closing the courtroom and you're coming to this training. And there are a number of other trainings that I could give you as examples. There were mandatory trainings that required courthouses to come together to talk about race. So judges sat in for all-day seminars or half-day seminars with court officers, court clerks, and probation officers, and everybody sat together equally. Court officers sat together equally talking about race and how they would deal with particular circumstances in their courtroom if it presented itself. Again, all sort of cultural competencies. We're aware of them. We're trying to deal with them.
Well, thank you for that. And as we're pushing up towards time, I do want to give you both a chance, shine a light on the things that you're doing, both in the CSJ and both in the court. I know, Judge Krupp, you spoke on a number of different things that the court has going on and personal initiatives that you're a part of. So, like, with the people that are here in attendance and for people that may see this video, how can they get involved with different initiatives, and what are some opportunities out there that you can promote for both the CSJ and the courts? Gladys, can you start? Could you start?
Yes. So at the CSJ, we have a program. It's called CDI, a Consumer Debt Initiative, and we are in court every Thursday and Friday, 2 sessions each day, one at 10 and the other one is at 2. So we have anyone can come, they can do pro bono with us, they can be our externs during the semester or interns during the summer. So we give you a training and you come with us right into action immediately. Into action. So it's a great experience. Here with me, it's Tia. I don't know if you know her, Tia Caras. You know her, Zeno, but I don't know if the other ones know her. She's our paralegal. She's also a law student here. And she began, coming to court once in a while. And now she's not coming now because she's helping Judge Fine with some admin work. But people in court ask me about her. Where is your student? Where is she? She does a great job there. She tries cases. She, with such confidence, she's great. And she learned there. She learned in the program, being there in the program. So yes, it's a great experience.
That sounds like an amazing opportunity.
Yes.
Amazing.
And also we have Corey, but Corey, we will have an event in May. We also we will send an email with all the information, and we will need volunteers for that day. It's on the 20th, I think.
And then for everything that is mentioned here, I'll definitely get links from both of you and try to incorporate it into our bios and things like that. Is there anything on the court side, Judge Krupp?
I think I've pretty much covered it. We need
Excellent.
we need more people with great knowledge and great energy.
Well, I think that we're in great hands, and we have leaders like both of you at the helm, giving us and providing these opportunities. I really want to appreciate both of you and thank you for being here and taking the time out of your busy schedules and lives to, spend some time with the Just Us movement and open up our program for the webinar series. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. And as we're approaching 6:30, I want to close out by once again thanking you both. I want to ask everyone to, give Attorney Vila and Judge Krupp a round of applause. Be on the call. And then thank you again. Join us in continuing the fight against, the barriers that we face every single day. I appreciate you all for being here. The Just Us movement is very much alive, very much going. I'm just really excited that we're off the ground and we have an amazing team. I have amazing people supporting. So follow us on the Just Us movement social media platforms. Stay informed about the upcoming events and advocacy campaigns. Please save the date for our next webinar, which will be on March 6th, which is Black Balloon Day. We'll be covering different things such as self-harm, addiction. We'll be having leaders throughout the community touching on those fields and those topics. And we'll also be trying to create a healthier, more equitable community with our Empowerment Kit Drive, which is up on our social media page. So please follow our social medias and share what you learned during this webinar with the community and expand awareness and foster compassion. So thank you again.
Hey, Zeno, can I just say one thing? If you
Absolutely.
decide that you want to do a project, either the Just Us movement or anybody who's on this call, and it would be helpful to get an introduction to a chief judge of this court or that court or something like that, okay, call me. I'm happy to run interference and help you with that process. If you're not feeling, I think you can call directly. I don't think you need me as an intermediary, but if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We definitely appreciate that. Yes.